Hello, building 43 diorama, and today we will be looking at working on our dio base. And as you can see from the last time you saw this, a lot has changed. The last time you saw this, I was putting on the foam, and after that, I applied paper cloth, or as us Germans would call it, Gipsbinden, to the overall surface, just to get a flat and level playing field that would be a good adhesive for the paint. And I also added a plaster rock from MAME, which is modern armies and miniatures from the Zocco shop. Then I applied a coat of cheap acrylics from a craft store. Those are like I think €3 a pop. It's terracotta colored, and it's not the color that I wanted to buy. I wanted to buy a brownish color, but the terracotta one is also good, and I'm fine in using that. I then highlighted some areas where there would be shadow with the black primer, just to make sure that those shadow areas would still be dark enough. And I painted the rock with acrylics and some oils. And then yesterday I started applying this. This is AK Interactive's terrain series, and this is the Muddy Ground acrylic diorama paste. It's an acrylic color medium with grainy texture, and I love the results that it creates, and I love what I am able to achieve with this. So I started last night, and I let it set overnight, and I hope you can see the texture of this, and I hope that the texture actually comes out nice on camera, but I really love the way this looks. And I also bought, from the same series, Wet Ground, which will be our main surface for the roads. And like I said before, we will be adding snow, a lot of snow. I'm at this point not yet sure whether or not I'm going to use the snow products that I have at my disposal right now, or whether or not I want to buy some of the AK Terrain series snow, but we'll see about that. So what's next? What we are going to do now is we are going to apply more of the texture, the muddy ground texture, to this upper area here, where we will have our house at a later point. But before we do, I need to mark down the dimensions of the house so that I don't put the paint where the house is going, because that would be a waste of paint and would make it much tougher for me to fit the house at a later point. So I'm just gonna mark this down. Always nice to have a pencil handy. And like I did last time, having your straight edge is also a good idea. Let's try and keep this a straight line and as straight as possible. And there we have it. That's the area of our shed that will go on there. I use pencil and not like permanent marker, because the permanent marker would always kind of I don't know what the correct word is, but it kind of drains the acrylic paint, and you can always see the black on the top, and if you put snow on the top, it probably will even drain through the snow. So I don't want this. And here we go. This is how this looks inside. It looks a bit like chocolate pudding. But pudding, but no, don't eat this. Although it's acrylic, so you probably can eat it, but I would still not eat it. We use an old brush This is a soft bristle brush with some stiffness to it. We just apply this straight from the pot. Try not to put it where the house is going. Just try to go around the outlines of the house that we put down. And we can be very... We will need to retouch this in a second, but when we first apply it, we can be less deliberate than maybe we would be in other situations. Just put it on there, and like I said, we will touch this up in a second. It needs to start drying and start curing before we can start adding the texture to this, because once this starts setting, we can add lovely texture to this, which is why I'll be applying this to the entire upper surface now. Oh, see? Don't want to use too much though, because we don't want blobs to show up. Keep the house area clean, like I said. And right now I'm only using the paint that gets stuck to the lid when you move this around. So everything's awesome, and you get a lot out of these bowls here. And this is not a small dio piece, so I'm pretty sure I can do the entire dio piece with these two pots and still have lots of it left over for future projects. We can also already see some of the areas where it's starting to cure. We can retouch them with our brush. Just stippling motion. Okay, this is going to be enough for now. Always try and clean your brush after you've done as much as I just did. Use a paper towel, a pot of water. Try and clean the brush as good as possible. Maybe I should have gotten some clean water here. Give me a second, I'll be right back, because the water I have is the water I used last night. Need a new pot of water. Be right back. Only it's going to take me 30 seconds. The good thing about this stuff is, since it's an acrylic product, it allows you to clean it off with water, reactivate it with water. Always a good thing. That's why I like it so much. The fact that it is acrylic, it's non-toxic, I guess. Well, I haven't tasted it, but I don't think I want to taste it. And here you can see it's starting to cure. Now we can start adding the texture to it, and it's no problem if you kind of mix the already dried areas that I did yesterday with the new areas. Just try and cover all of the underlying primer color, and maybe I could have primed the base in a more brownish color after I applied the terracotta. The reason I applied the terracotta acrylics was just so the white of the plaster cloth would not be visible anymore. And once I've built the house, we will be, of course, blending the edges of the mud to the house as well. And there will be snow, and from the door of the house there will probably be a small pathway down the hill, where of course there will not be as much snow, and we'll retouch the mud in those areas as well. But like you see, just with small stippling motions with the brush, you don't want it to be too soft a brush. It should have some stiffness to the bristles. You can really create beautifully textured, muddy surface. And I was already impressed with the AK Terrain series when I built my desert diorama of the Panzer IV, because I used these sand colored uh, texture paints for that, and I was really impressed with how they turned out. And like I said, always remember clean your brush after, say, a minute or so, just to keep the bristles clean and to give you more control of what you do, and not just spreading the paint on top of the paint, because that way you would destroy your nice texture. And at some points when you clean your brush, you can actually see what the texture is that is added here. There's small particles of sand in there that when you clean your brush, you clean off, and then you have like unpainted particles of sand sitting on top of your dia, but you can just blow them off with the airbrush, and should be fine then. I love the process. It's not a tedious process. Of course, you need to rework some areas every now and then. You can you can watch it, and when you see it dry, it starts to turn a bit darker and less glossy, and then you can see how it looks, and then you can see whether or not you need to retouch and touch up some of the areas. And thus, I really like this. I mean, like I said, you can always like use the dry brush to remove like dirt or what have you that you see settling on your surface. And always try and make sure that none of the underlying color shines through, especially if you have chosen a lighter color like a white or a gray or what have you. Well, in this case, a terracotta, kind of brownish red or reddish brown. Try and cover it all up. Try and make sure to have texture everywhere. And of course, if you get something on the frame of your dial like I just did, since this is acrylic, up to a certain point you can reactivate this stuff with some water and then just wipe it off with a paper towel. There you go. There you go. Dial base clean. The frame is always important to just check on the frame, clean it off, and you're good to go again. And like I said, I love the texture that this adds. It's not cheap, although for the amount you get, it's 250 milliliters. It's about €8.50. Like I said, this will carry at least 2, 3, 4, depending on the size dioramas. I don't think you can go wrong with this, and I'm really happy with the way this looks. And I know that there are people out there that say this is lazy to not make your own mud. Like Hamil Kobarkas told me last night, come on, go into your garden and sift sand and earth, and then you'll have your own mud. The problem is, I live in an apartment building, and we don't have a big garden. Well, we don't have a garden at all where I could go and sift some earth, so I'm kind of reliant on a product like this. So while I see his point that there are probably cheaper ways to do this, I still have to say that for me, in my current living situation, this is the best way of achieving these results. And I have tried to do it his way in the past with some soil from my parents' garden, and that didn't work out at all, so I wasn't happy with the way that turned out. So yeah, maybe Bavarian soil is better. And actually, I suggested to him he bottle up Bavarian soil and sell it as Bavarian soil for modelers, and I guess he would make a nice like could uh, pay for a couple of tanks that way, and some of his projects that way. So the Dio paint has almost dried, like you saw. I used a small brush the entire time. You can also use a bigger brush to add maybe different kinds of texture to this, a bit coarser texture. You also want to leave some areas where there is a bit more, then you get a bit coarser texture like over here. Overall, this is a very easy method to do this. Hello to my 3 viewers. Welcome. Thank you for watching. Good morning or good day, whatever time it is where you are right now. Glad you joined. Has anybody? No, no comments yet. Okay. This was a very easy way to add a first layer of mud to those areas. And since this is going to be covered in snow, we are not gonna spend like days building up the layers of mud on those surfaces. I think this is perfectly fine the way this is. Once we tackle the road with the wet ground, we will of course have to work up a bit higher because we have to have tank tracks in there. Since we don't have tank tracks on these raised areas up here, we don't need to go into like millimeters thickness, like 3 or 4 millimeters. But this is perfectly fine thickness that we have achieved here on this raised area right now. And there's not much that I would touch up on this. Like I said, I'm always keeping an eye out here how the texture is looking. If there's like loose texture, like I said, you can just blow it off, or you can use the brush. You can also use a sponge if you want to add texture. This is also perfectly fine. I'll show you for a second. Just rip off a piece of the sponge. This is just a normal kitchen sponge, and you can just add texture like this as well. So whatever you fancy, sponge, brush. I don't know if there are other possibilities out there, but yeah, there, like I said, there are a couple that all work perfectly fine. I decided to use a brush because it's easier to clean the brush, and I think I have more control over a brush tip than I have over a piece of sponge between my fingers. Um, Overall, I have to say, this is coming along nicely. I have another project on the go currently that I'm working on off on. It's a restoration of an old diorama building that I once built, and I made a video of this on YouTube, and it wasn't like, I looked at it in the display cabinet and I was like, this just looks wrong, so I removed 80% of it and then redid it, and it's now sitting behind me, and I'm hacking on it like on and off, and then I'm working on this, and I'm working on the Panzer IV, although I haven't started the construction of the Panzer IV just yet. But I am going to do this maybe even today. The Kursk build is done, so that's out of the way for now. So it's full concentration on this and some side projects, because every now and then this needs curing time or drying time, or just needs something else. Just need to do something that's in a different stage of building. So I'll put this to the side, let this dry, and then I hack at the other one, and then I put the other one away, and then I'll retouch this. And it's just, I just need variation, I'd say, and I just need to be able to do different stuff at different times. And right now I'm happy with where this is, and how much time I can spend on this. And next week I'll be in Vienna, and I'll won't be able to do anything on this, but this week I have a lot of time to do this. And once I'm back from Vienna, I have 2 more weeks of holidays in which I'll be hopefully able to get this over the finish line. The rock, in case you want to know, I painted this in Revell acrylics. It's a dark gray, and then I added some even darker grays, working wet in the crevices and blended the colors. Hello. And then I dry brushed it with a lighter gray. Then I used oils to make the dirt stains on top and in the creases. And then I used an oil gray to add some highlights in certain areas, and that was basically all I did on this one. I might just go over the top with some white paint at a later point, but I'm not entirely sure whether or not that would be too far. What we will be doing next on this, or what I will be doing next, is probably I'll finish the raised area up here with some of the AK paint that I've been using. And once that's done, we will probably either build the house first, or we will start putting in the road with the wet ground here. But before I put in the road, I think I want to at least have some sort of what's it called? Some sort of plan on how exactly I want the tank tracks to run down there, and I think for that matter, we'll probably build the house first. But I need to see whether or not I have all the material I need, or if I have to go to McDonald's and pick up some coffee stirrers. Yes, they are awesome. I love them. I have these two, then I have the light and dry crackle effects. I've got the splatter effects, wet mud. I've got the sandy desert and the desert sand terrains, and now I added the muddy ground and the wet ground. And I love them. I think they're great. I think they're affordable. And I think they go a long way of improving my diorama building and my terrain building. Because this is something that I was never really happy with, the way my grounds looked and the way my mud looked. And for mud, I discovered Scenic Factory, and their mud is great for foresty areas. I haven't tried their non-foresty mud. They, of course, have cursed earth, for example. I haven't tried that out yet, but I suggest this is awesome as well, because Scenic Factory stuff is awesome, but it's hard for me to get from the States, and the AK stuff is easy for me to get, so I gave them a shot, and I like them just as well. All of those products are really helpful for modelers, and I'm really happy that they exist, because I would have trouble creating soil myself for diorama pieces. Let me just move this up, and as you can see, I even like the color. You can give this a dry brush, add some oils, and you would be good to go to just leave it like that without adding like snow or anything. Just add some vegetation, and you would be good to go with this. That's at least what I think. Some dry brush, some like highlights and some shades, and you'd be good to go. Maybe add some wet effects. Be really good to go. I don't like the AK primer to be 100% honest with you. I've bought AK primer in the past, and I just don't think it acts like a primer should act. So I decided to ditch it, and all I'm using for primer right now is the Stynylrez or Ultimate Primer or One Shot Primer, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same. It's all Badger Stynylrez, just relabeled by other companies. Best acrylic primer out there, at least. That's what I think. So yes, I like the way this looks now, and I like the way this is going. Since I do have to do some chores around the house for now, I think I need to start another washing machine. Oh, that's good for you. I think I need to start another washing machine, so, hi. Germany. I am in Germany. Yes. I'm debating whether or not I will shut this live stream down now to do the washing machine, or whether or not I will just leave you guys sitting here while I do the washing machine, put up the laundry, and be back. Okay. Huh. I'll look into that. Yes, I need to put laundry in the washing machine, press the button, wait another 1.5 hours till it's done. You tell me that my English is bad? Okay, come on. It's like, no, I'm just not gonna. But by the way, I told you so. I just wanted to say, I told you so. Um, but yes, I'll just leave you guys for a second. I'll let this dry. I'll go pick up the laundry downstairs. I'll take more laundry downstairs, shove it in the washing machine, press start, and I'll be right back in about 5 minutes. So until then, think of fancy elevator music, and I will be right back. back in the fold. As if I was never gone. What have I missed? Nothing. Awesome. I'm back. Laundry is in the washing machine. Delicates are now drying in the bedroom. Now that it is almost dry, we can see if there are areas that we need to retouch, because there are still areas that are not dry where we can get some of the paint from. But I like this. Alright, so that was 34 minutes of adding mud. And now it's even more minutes of adding mud, because we still have this area. So, like we did before, take out our bowl of muddy ground, and again, something has collected around the lid, which we can now just staple onto our base, like we did before. No biggie. And I like the fact that a lot of my live videos have now turned into watching paint dry videos, which I bet someone will make fun of. And I know who that someone is, right, Seb? See? That easy. And all we needed was the contents of the lid. No need to add more from the actual bottle. What you need to be careful though is turn it the wrong way and then really screw this tight, because you don't want this to dry in the jar. More water. Always handy to have old bottles to have water in sitting on your bench. And like I said, you can do this with a sponge, and I'll demonstrate it with a sponge right now. Like I said, kitchen sponge, rip off a piece. And let's blend the area that we just did like a couple of minutes ago with the new one. And it's really that simple. It's nothing that I do off camera or something to add texture to this. It's all I'm doing right now. Put the paint on, take out a brush or a sponge like right now, and just stipple it to add texture. And it's no issue if we actually put this into the areas where the road is supposed to be later on, because we will just add since it's acrylic, once we add the wet ground on top of it, it should be no problem whatsoever. But like I said, we need to let this set for a second to see if there are areas where we still need to add a bit more texture. Use our sponge. Or our brush, no matter what. I just wanted to demonstrate that you can achieve the exact same results that I achieved with the brush over here with a sponge. Always try and check whether or not there's anything that you need to remove. You can, as long as it's wet, you can remove it with a finger, like so. And just clean your finger on the paper towel. Just cleans off with tap water, no problem whatsoever. No worries that you have ruined your fingers or anything when you do this. And then always think of where would areas be where the texture would be coarser than in other areas, right? Like the edges would be a bit more coarser, like along the decline here, because there's less dread on it than, for example, up here where the people would walk. But like I said, we'll cover this in snow and a lot of it, and then the pathway will be covered with the wet ground, so no worries if there's anything where we're like, oh my god, I overdid it or anything. It will be covered with snow. And I will be showing you guys the covering with snow process as well, because this is actually the one I'm looking forward to the most, doing a snow dio on camera. And I like the effects that we have achieved up to this point. Then again, there are always like small areas where we need to touch it up. Then we can put our piece of sponge away after a short period of time, because it soaks in paint. And once it's soaked in paint, I wouldn't use it anymore. And the good thing about this paste is once it's dry, you can even sand this off, okay? So if there's still something on the edge of your dio that you don't want there because you want a nice flat edge that you can paint black after all, no issue whatsoever. You can sand this off once it's dry because it's an acrylic paste medium that will just sand off rather quickly and easily. Now again, I'll use my brush to blend the edges, but it's just adding to what we already did with the sponge. There's no like secret. Sorry for that. That was my alarm that told me you have to get the laundry out of the washing machine, which I already did. See? Awesome me. So I don't have to leave you again. Sorry for the background noises. As you can see, we left the space where the house goes free of mud, so we don't have to then like try and I don't know, push it in there, because we want the house to be as like level as possible, because even in Russia, even during World War World War II, they would have built houses that were flat and not like angled or crooked. Because have you ever lived in a house with a crooked floor? No bueno, no fun. So yes, we want this to be flat. You can also thin the texture paints with water, but when you do that, water, Mr. Campbell, just for you, water. But then you will not achieve as nice as a texture as we just did, because it will be thinned down, of course. On that note, I think this will end today's exactly. This will end today's 45-minute live hangout, and if I feel the need for another one today, if I start with this, for example, I'll be back later on. Otherwise, I'll be working some on the other project off camera, or working on the Panzer IV off camera, but we'll see what happens. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you soon. This is How I'm Modeling. Bye for now.